All right, guys. Jordan Holscher here, the FitCon. Video of this week is going to be racism and gangs in prison in Canada. You got to get down or you're going to get done in. Well, it just depends on you, I guess. I got lots of insight on it, so if you're going to stay tuned, please feel free to like and subscribe my video channel. Comment if you got any questions. You don't believe what I'm saying, leave a comment. Got a problem with me? Leave a comment. You like things? Leave a comment. We'll go from there. I spent about 6.5 to 7 years incarcerated for 2 separate drug charges. Possession for the purpose for a small amount of coke. Proceeds of crime, I got 3 years for that. Before I went to trial for that, I was out on bail for a few years, continuing to do my thing. I managed to pick up some heavier charges, which was commissioning the offense of an organized crime group for the benefit. Commissioning the offense, a criminal offense, for the benefit of an organized crime group. So, directing a criminal organization. Was I running some huge international gang? No, but in Canada law, 3 or more people believed to be doing a crime together is considered an organized crime group. So it's basically a watered down version of what they would have in the States, which is the RICO. But with RICO, you can spend the rest of your life in prison. And same with mine. My was life in prison. But they look at mitigating and aggravating factors as to how much you're doing, what you're doing, before they're going to sentence you to either a very long or short period of time. So how it worked out with myself is when I went to prison, I was selling drugs by myself. There was a period of time when I thought it would be cool to join a gang of motorcycle people because I've always had motorcycles my whole life and got along with them. So cruise around, hang out with people. Eventually, after nightlife years piling up on you, you start to spend more and more time with these people. Instead of paying for drugs, because I like to party like a rock star, it seemed like a better idea to just buy them in bulk and sell them to people, and then just do the profit, basically, right? Get high on your own supply. Not a good idea. So I did that for a period of time, and the city I was living in was very low, very high turnover rate. A lot of police, a lot of rats, not a lot of people, so the police knew everyone who was doing anything, and if you look like myself, fully tattooed, wearing a bunch of grimy necklaces and jewelry and chains and driving expensive vehicles, stuff like that, sticks out like a sore thumb. Sure, I worked in the oil patch most of the year, so I made a significant amount of cash working on the rigs, but eventually that came to an end when the oil patch kind of got more shut down in 2008, at which point I just kind of pursued fully the narcotics trafficking because I had developed a bit of a network and had some friends and everybody liked to party. I didn't look at it like I was killing anyone, I just was trying to survive, provide my party friends with something to party with, instead of getting garbage. So that's how that started out, and we did that for years and years, and then eventually picked up some negative attention and got myself a 3-year sentence. Didn't change my ways, didn't really have any intentions on doing that. 2 years later, before trial, I got recharged. The cumulative sentence they were looking at was a life sentence for organized crime charges. I fought those throughout the entire sentence I was in the first time, so I finished my first sentence. I went to Drumheller to the max in Edmonton, and then got out to remand, and then was eventually ground to bail. Waited about 8 or 9 months, and then it turned out that things weren't going to pan out very well for me at that trial, so I was looking at another significant chunk. So I came back to do round 2 of 2, and that's it. So inside, what I figured out was, being an older guy, you don't really need to have to join a gang. It's not like in the States where if you're in the state pen and you go in there Guys are going to look at you. You're going to have to basically pick and choose who you're going to sit with, who you're going to be with, who you're going to associate with. It's way more race-oriented there. Canada, it is still quite race-oriented. You know, the black guys hang out with the black guys. You know, Hispanics, natives or aboriginals to themselves. Rapists to themselves. Regular white guys just going to do their own thing, right? The thing in Canada is there's a lot of different gangs, so those gangs will kind of associate within themselves, and that'll be more of the clucking order of who hangs out with who. So when I went in, I was not running a gang. I just had a few people that they considered a gang, and I used to buy drugs from a few different gang groups, and I would sell them to my guys and other gang affiliated groups. So I wasn't a gang member per se, but I knew lots of different gang members through the grapevine of that kind of business. And that's just the way it was. So I was very neutral with, say, the guys that everyone thought I looked like, because I had a beard and drove a Harley. I looked like a biker, so they thought maybe I was some biker, which I wasn't, although I did hang out with some. The guys that I particularly dealt with are from out here on the coast, and they had beef with other guys all out and about. And they had their own agenda as to what gangs and what activity they were getting into, which I really wanted no part in. I like just being at small scale and avoiding the heat radar. So I avoided the gang conflict while I was inside by just doing my own thing. Initially, it got to a point where I was assaulted at one point in Drumheller over miscommunication and probably some behind the scenes people trying to stir the pot, and that got mediated out due to the fact that my friends in two different high power groups wanted it dealt with, but weren't going to compromise my safety or reality by taking things in their own hands. Basically, in jail, if someone assaults you or fucks you up, you're going to have to fight back. You're going to have to get into a beef, otherwise you're just going to get looked at as a bitch. For myself, this was just at a point where I had finally got myself access to a BlackBerry cell phone, because I still had some things going on, people wanted to talk to on the street. So after paying or splitting a $6,000 cell phone with a friend of mine inside, the last thing I wanted to do was go to the hole and lose access to all that, right? So you pick and choose your battles in there. It's easy to go punch somebody out and get sent to the hole, but if you're trying to get out and stay out, you just got to pick and choose your battles. I never had to join any gangs. The guys that I hung out with were guys that I knew from the street, on two different gangs. Some of them didn't even really get along with each other that much, but they were cool with the fact that I was a self-employed businessman and I kind of did my own thing and carried myself well and wasn't a scumbag. So in Canada, yeah, you're going to need to probably, if you go in there, stick with someone that looks like yourself. I noticed when I was in there, for every jail, most of the black dudes chilled with themselves. White guys tend to chill with themselves. Different ethnicities, Mexican, Spanish, South American, Chinese, Asian, they all kind of hung with themselves, right? And there is always the odd dude who will kind of float in there, get the odd floater guy. And that's just the way it is, because in this day and age, that's just the way the world works. We're not that segregated. And it's not like in the States where if you're caught talking to a black guy or, dealing with somebody who's not in your race, you're going to get fucked up. So I only would talk to and deal with people I knew weren't scumbags. So basically you have to verify and background check the individuals you're talking to make sure they're not bad action or people that would come through the woodworks after of being rats or PC scumbags, and then your name also would be tarnished from associating with those individuals. But for the most part, I just went in and hung out with the guys that I used to roll around with on the street. A few of those good friends of mine from the street burnt me when I was in there because they're fucking drug addicts, like most people are. And I had a big falling out with a couple of them. So when I went to the max, I chose not to go to that side. I went to the other side where the bikers were at because I had more friends there, and I had a great time on that side. The people on the other side were questioning as why I was on that side when I had worked with so-and-so, and most of our work was coming from so-and-so, but I was dealing with multiple people, and I didn't really have too many reservations on who I was and wasn't dealing with, right? So you got to do what's best for you in there. If you're just going to get popped around like a puppet and go where you're told to go, you're just going to end up getting used and abused, shit on, and probably used for some tasks that are going to get you a longer sentence. And you just want to avoid that in general. So while you're in there, all you basically got to do, and there's not a lot of rules. I'll go through this long video down the road, is you just got to basically mind your business. If you're in the drug trade, you're going to have some issues because you're dealing with people that you probably have enemies with, right? Don't go to a prison where your different clique is not going to be getting along with guys. That's why out here they have certain jails that are sagged off for, with the big beef they got going on with certain mainland, inland, BC gangs, right? Go where you're welcome. Don't go where you're not welcome. Don't rubberneck when you're walking around. Don't be looking at people's cells. Don't be asking questions about people's business. Don't even be looking at somebody for more than a second unless you assume that's going to probably go the wrong way. Don't ask a lot of questions. There's just a lot of things you just want to avoid. Do your own time, it's called. Do your own time. Don't worry about what the guys next to you doing. If you got a cellmate who's getting himself into shit, getting himself into debt, buying drugs, doing this, doing that, the odds are you're going to have people rolling in the cell and probably banging them out or doing worse or turning them out if that's what happens. So pick your friends or your acquaintances very well. I was in for almost 7 years, and in those 7 years I have about maybe 6 people who I still communicate regularly with that are good people that I would consider good friends. Out of the other thousands, most of them are pieces of shit. Some of them are ones that you think and the general public would agree deserves to be in prison because they've done horrible things. And some just don't learn, they just don't care, they're just career criminals, and that's just the way it is. But when you come into a Canadian prison, you're all CCTV'd up, everything's on camera, there's a lot more rights we have here, so they want you to be in your best shape while they're in custody. They don't want you getting beat up, stabbed. Those are all lawsuits waiting to happen. So the guards are going to make sure in any means that you're going to be taken care of. They don't have protective custody anymore in any of the big joints because there's too many people who just are pussies and can't hack it in GP, so they go check in. And we just can't have 2 separate prison systems, so they get integrated here and there. What you have to pick your battles is with, do you want to spend another day in prison for punching this guy up because you don't like him? Or even worse, maybe some guy raped some young children and you think that's punishable by death. Do you want to kill that guy and pick up a life sentence? Probably most people would contemplate that. And for a guy who's serving life already, who's never getting out, he probably really doesn't care anyways. So when you're in the medium, it's going to be a little more relaxed, but still very violent. Maximum security, very violent. And minimum security, everyone's basically there, tiptoeing around, trying not to get sent back to the other 2 places so they can eventually migrate onto full parole or day parole. So at the end of the day, there is no basic race rules in Canada. You hang out with who you want to hang out with. I didn't have a lot of black friends when I was in there. Some of my tattoos look somewhat racist. I'm the farthest thing from a racist person you'd ever meet. One of my good friends was Mexican. We had spent a lot of time together. Other than that, I just, I love everybody who's worth to be loved. People who I don't like, liars, scumbags, and unfortunately that's a lot of criminals. So it's pretty easy to pick up on who's not a good guy and who is, just by the basic review you're going to get from everybody else when a guy's in prison as to how they conduct themselves. Listen, learn, pick it up on your own. Try not to get yourself into too deep of a situation with some of these people. It's not like the States where you got to click up to survive in there. You will survive quite well without joining a gang. But if you're a young guy and you want to get your foot in the door, it's a good place to do it. But you're going to have to put in a lot of dirt, and you're going to have to do some things that you're going to regret. And some of these kids just get the blunt end of the stick, and it's really too bad, because they're going to have to do the things that the guys in charge aren't willing to do. And what's the payback? Not much of anything, right? Pat on the back, maybe being loosely affiliated with some gang, right? And in prison, unless you're one of the main gangs, international gangs, global gangs, you got all these provincial gangs or city gangs. It's all high turnover, right? Usually whoever's running it will come out down the road that one of them's actually a sex offender from way back or did this bad action from way back. So it's not like what you might think it would be, right? Some of these gangs are just put together loosely by guys that are just basically trying to smuggle in narcotics, deal with them, not even make money, but just be heads and get high while they're in there. And that's kind of the extent of it, right? So there's a place and time for everybody. While you're in there, you're not going to be needing to be too concerned about what color you are, what nationality you are. You're just going to have to be concerned about your own moral standards. So avoid business that ain't yours. Don't get involved in shit that isn't yours. Keep your eyes to yourself. Don't piss people off. And sometimes all it might take is more than a look. And there's certain words in there you might mention, like a goof. If you call somebody a goof, expect to get punched out or stabbed. That's just the reality of the situation. I've been out for 2 years now, and every time I hear the word, it really aggravates me. But I have to remind myself I'm no longer incarcerated, and a word is just a word. So even being called a word by someone you know or care about is something you just have to shrug off and hope you don't go back to that environment where that's what you have to deal with, is all these little things that just pile up that in the real world mean nothing, but in the prison world mean basically life or death. So you guys got any more questions regarding prison content, what goes on, what happens? DM me, ask me some questions, where I've been, what happened. I'll fill you in anytime next week.